Hello students, welcome to Royal Palace PU College, Jamkhandi online classes. My name is Sanjay sir and I'll be teaching you biology. We have already finished the introductory part of ecosystem. We understood what is the structure and function of ecosystem. Today we'll be studying one of the important property of our great nature, that is productivity. Only from the definition itself, that is the definition of productivity itself, we can understand the value of plants on this planet Earth. It may be a vegetarian organism or a non-vegetarian organism, the entire biosphere is dependent on these producers, autotrophs or the plants. Now the first basic thing is the definition of productivity. What do you mean by productivity? It can be defined as it is the amount of biomass production per unit area per unit time during photosynthesis by the plants. Now in a simple terms, I must have to say that the plants perform their photosynthesis action under the sunlight. They utilize the sunlight as the radiant source of energy and convert that thing into the production of food. Now when I say there is a creation of fruits, then it is called as biomass produced. When I say that there is a creation of leaf, flower, stem, branches, etc., then I say that there is a production of biomass. Good amount of photosynthesis gives you good amount of biomass. That is how much weight it can weigh. Some of the places wherein which the photosynthesis process is slower or weaker or lesser, then the biomass production of that plant will also be lesser only. In the areas wherein which the sunlight, temperature, air, water, soil, all those abiotic factors favoring the photosynthesis results in the formation of good amount of biomass production. Now once again I am telling you that what do you mean by biomass production with respect to productivity? It is nothing but the amount of mass which is produced inside the body of the plants in a specific area during the specific time by the plants during photosynthesis. It is very simple. It can be expressed with an equation called as g to the power of -2 and per year, wherein which I can say that G can also be written in the form of kilocalorie per square meter per year. Now from the equation itself we can understand that it is per area and per time. Why they have mentioned per area and per time? Because all the places does not have the equal amount of photosynthetic activity, because all those places does not have the same quantity of air, temperature, soil, water, etc. Different places have got different availability of these sources. So as the sources will be available, the photosynthesis rate will increase. It is a common thing, right? So that's why they said that during a specific place, during a specific area and during a specific time, what is the production of biomass inside the body of plants during photosynthesis is called as the productivity. I hope you are understanding it. Okay, now let us enter into the types of this productivity. The productivity has got two types, two divisions: primary and secondary productivity. The definition of primary productivity concerns with the producers, that is plants, and the definition of secondary productivity concerns with the consumers or animals or other organisms. So once again, for the primary productivity definition, I can go with respect to productivity definition only. That is the amount of biomass or the organic matter which is produced under a specific area and a specific time during photosynthesis by the plants is called as primary productivity. It is the same as that of the productivity definition only. Now it is also measured in terms of weight only, that is per square of G and per year, kilocalorie per square meter per year. Remember, G is with respect to weight, YR, year, is with respect to time, kilocalorie is with respect to energy, M is with respect to area, and once again here YR is with respect to time. Please do not get it confused. Now the definition of secondary productivity. What do you mean by the secondary productivity? The amount of biomass produced when the consumers eat the primary producers or the plants. As far as the utilizing the sunlight and performing the photosynthesis and producing the biomass is concerned, it is called as primary. And when let us consider two things. One as a plant and another as an organism such as a deer. Now this plant under the photosynthetic activity produces the food inside it. It grows in size, that is called as biomass. Now this is called as primary productivity and this plant is being eaten by the deer. Now the energy is transferred from this plant to the deer. We can say that now after eating the leaves of this plant or eating the parts of this plant, the energy or the mass is created in the body of a deer. Plant is an autotroph, plant is independent, animal is heterotroph, and it is dependent. So the energy is transferred from here to here. So the energy produced inside the body of a consumer during a particular period of time, particular period of area is called as secondary productivity. I hope you are understanding it. In case of primary productivity, there are further divisions. Two types we see in primary productivity, and what are those? Gross primary productivity GPP and net primary productivity NPP. I repeat, gross primary productivity GPP and net primary productivity NPP. Now let us understand what are the differences between these two. First one, what is gross GROSS, gross primary productivity. Once again, the definition of GPP or gross primary productivity is similar to primary productivity, which is similar to productivity. It is the amount of organic matter or the biomass which is produced during photosynthesis in the plants per area per time is called as the gross primary productivity, which means that it is the total energy. Try to understand, this is the total amount of mass which is produced inside the body of the plants. Now, what is the difference here with respect to NPP? What is net primary productivity? It is also one of the easiest to point only, but a little confusing. Try to understand it. Consider that the plant has done the photosynthesis completely. The photosynthesis is over. It produced the food over. Now, it does not mean that the entire plant is useful. All the 100% of a plant's biomass is useful, because all that biomass will be allowed to enter into to go to some other biological processes of that plant also. There will be some amount of energy which will be entering into the production of fruits. There will be some amount of biomass which will be entering into the growth of the plants. There will be some amount of energy or the biomass which will be entering into the translocation of minerals from one place to another place. So growth, development, etc., all these factors will be utilizing this particular energy produced by the photosynthetic activity. Now the entire thing is GPP or the gross, but entire variety is not at all usable for the consumers to eat. There will be lesser amount of biomass present in the body of plants that can be eaten. Not everything. Understand? All the 100% content of the plant is not at all usable, because it is already being taken up by its own biological activities. There will be only less amount of biomass or the organic matter which is present in the body of producers, and that is being transferred to the consumers, and this process is called as net primary productivity. Don't forget it. Dear students, once again I am repeating the same processes again and again: gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. During the photosynthesis, per unit area, per unit time, what amount of biomass is produced in the body of plants is called as gross. Now, all this 100% of the biomass is not at all usable. Only less amount is present in the body of producers which can be eatable, and that content is called as net primary productivity, and it can be given by an expression also. Net primary productivity NPP is equal to gross primary productivity, that is GPP minus R, wherein which R is nothing but the residual amount which is present in the body of the plants, which is being utilized for the metabolic activities. Then, so GPP will be for the biological activities of the plants such as respiration and can be utilized by the plants only. NPP is not for the plants, it is for the other organisms, and it is for, in general, it is for consumers. Remember. Now let us go to another point, and that is what are the different factors affecting the productivity of the plants. Point number one is the area. Area is very important, because in this area itself we see variety of abiotic factors and their influences. So area is important. And second thing, about the environmental factors which are present in this area. Now what are those environmental factors? Let us go one by one. Point number one is sunlight. The productivity of the plants will be higher if the sunlight concentration is more. The primary productivity, gross productivity or general productivity of the plants, or the photosynthetic activity or the rate of productivity will be higher only in the higher concentration of sunlight. Do not worry about it. Do not forget about it. More amount of sunlight, which means that more amount of photosynthesis, which means that more amount of productivity. That's why I have mentioned so many times that in case of the plants which are present in the tropical regions, because tropical regions receive highest amount of sunlight and the amount of plants will also be higher in those places. So the productivity in case of tropical regions will be higher because they absorb higher amount of sunlight. Let us go to point number 2, temperature. As I mentioned about the temperature in my previous chapter also, organisms and population. Temperature is important for the basic metabolic activity of the plants or any organisms. Now, if you want to perform under the influence of temperature, the range of temperatures are important, because the temperature maintains the enzymatic activity. Enzymes are so sensible that if the temperature is low, they will not perform very well. And if the temperature is very high, once again their activity decreases. So the enzymes need a specific temperature at which the activity of these enzymes will be higher. We call that one as optimum temperature. I repeat, the temperature at which the enzymatic activity will be higher is called as optimal temperature. They do not like highest temperature, they do not like lowest temperature. They'll be needing in between temperature, wherein which it feels that this is the time wherein which I have to show my maximum efficiency. Done, sir? So point number 1, sunlight. Point number 2, temperature. Let's go to point number 3, moisture. Moisture is nothing but content of water, and it is present in rain or the atmospheric moisture itself, humidity. Now in the atmosphere or in that particular area, if the concentration of rain or the precipitation is higher, which means that the photosynthetic activity along with the absorption of water, the rate will be higher, the productivity will be higher. If I compare the tropical regions, grassland regions and Antarctic regions and the desert regions, I say that in case of deserts, the productivity will be less, because it contains and it absorbs higher amount of sunlight, higher amount of temperature, and the humidic conditions or the moisture conditions or the precipitation or rain conditions will be less. That's why in these places the productivity will be very less. But if you compare them with respect to tropical regions, the highest amount of productivity, highest amount of precipitation, highest amount of water conditions you can see. Now we'll go further about the soil conditions. If that area's soil contains higher amount of minerals, nutrients, that also influences the easy uptake of these contents, so that it will be helpful for that plant to grow effortlessly. If the plant is enormous in structure and very healthy in nature, it means that it has absorbed very good content from the soil, that is water, minerals, etc., etc. So about the soil and mineral conditions of the soil is also important as a productivity factor. Let's go to next point. In some of the cases, all these things are favorable to the plants, but then also the productivity will be very less. What does that mean? Not all the plants have got the efficiency to trap the sunlight and perform the photosynthesis. For example, sugarcane. Sugarcane has got higher amounts of photosynthetic efficiency, that it absorbs good amounts of sunlight and performs the photosynthesis. Hence, its productive biomass content will be higher. Dear students, this is about the factors which influence the rate of productivity. When you start studying in your NCERT textbook, whatever that I mentioned right now, each and every line will be present in your books. As I said in the beginning itself, that I'll be concentrating on each and every line of NCERT, right? So in the NCERT, when they talk about productivity, they talk about two words. One as the dry weight and another one as the biomass weight. What do you mean by dry weight? Dry weight is that weight which is freed from the water or moisture which is present from the body. Try to understand, if I am talking about a plant, that in that plant, if the content of water is there, it is called as the total biomass. What is a dry mass? If you remove the water content from it, then it is called as the dry weight. Now, an interesting fact, in the entire biosphere or in the world, can you imagine how much amount of organic dry matter produced in this whole world? It is approximately 170 per year. It's very huge. Now one can say that our earth has got two divisions, the 70% of water area and 30% of land area. By the statement of 170 billion organic matter production, one can easily think that the highest amount of organic production will be done by the 70%, that is oceanic or the water levels, or the organisms or the plants which are produced in the water. No, surprisingly, no, because majority of the production of the photosynthetic activity or the photosynthetic biomass will be dissolved in the water. So majority of the content will not be done which is in the water. Though it has 70% of the Earth's area, it produces hardly 55 billion tons of the organic matter. The rest will be produced by the 30% of the globe, that is planet Earth, which means that the plants or the organisms which are present in the 30% of the area or the land area has got highest amounts of biomass production. Once again I repeat, if I compare the life of water and the life of the land, the highest production will be done by the land organisms, not from the water organisms. Okay, the productivity will be higher in case of land species or land organisms only. Don't forget it. Dear students, until this time we discussed a fair amount of productivity topic. I hope you understood this. Not all the biology topics will be done or will be studied in only one session. It takes time with respect to other subjects also. It takes time as like other subjects. So what you have to think and what you have to believe is that repetition is the key to success. The more amount of repetition helps you in understanding and grabbing the knowledge of this biology content from the videos. Otherwise, it's just a movie watching. So my personal sincere request is that you keep on reading, keep on studying, keep on watching my videos. It will help you. I'm not saying 100%. I'm just saying that for a certain extent of your brain can receive my kind of biology. I hope you understood this. As you know, we have already started a chapter called as PU's second year, chapter number 14, Ecosystem. Today, we'll be studying a new topic of this chapter, and that is decomposition. Now, I can say personally that without the process of this wonderful decomposition stage, the nature would have never sustained its life. The human beings or other organisms, it may be plants, animals or some other things, it would have never sustained their life into this planet Earth. So decomposition is that much important. As far as the plants for the food, consumers for getting the food, and finally the bacteria and fungus for decomposing those materials is essentially needed. Now let us understand this particular topic, the beauty of it, and what are the different stages of it, why actually we need this decomposition, some of the other factors influencing the rate of decomposition. Let's understand. First thing, it may be an animal body or a plant body. Any organism is made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, etc. kind of organic and inorganic materials in their body. Now the question is, what actually happens when these plants and animals die? Where do they go? Today's topic, what is the life of these organisms after their death, but biologically. I'll be explaining about these stages biologically, and that process is called as decomposition. Now dear students, when an organism dies, it may be a plant or an animal, it should be broken down into smaller compounds. Imagine that a larger compound is being cut down into smaller pieces and allowing that to enter into the soil surface, wherein which inside the soil surface they once again become minerals, nutrients, and that will be recycled again for the purpose of regrowth of some more plant structures. This process is called as decomposition. If you ask me, I say that this is a recycling process, because if an organism dies, we cannot use it again. If the plant or an animal dies, we cannot use it. They won't get the life back. So of course, there should be some process to cremate them. Now this is the thing done by the bacteria and some of the earthworms. Once again I repeat, they cut down, breaking down of the complex substance into smaller inorganic substances like carbon, carbon dioxide, water and nutrients is called as decomposition. To start the process of decomposition, we need raw materials. We call these raw materials as detritus, right? So if I have to give some of the examples for detritus, then it will be dead plants, animal remains, and then the fecal matter of the organisms. Fecal matter, the waste, excretory waste material from the organisms. So we need detritus. Now let us enter into the stages of decomposition and try to understand this process. The decomposition has 5 different steps. Step number 1 called as fragmentation. In this process, the dead material or the detritus or the plant specimen or animal specimen, whatever it may be, it is broken down into smaller pieces and particles. This is called as fragmentation. Fragmentation, breaking that entire content into smaller particles. That is stage number 1 called as the fragmentation. Now this breaking down of this complex material is done by the help of earthworms. Earthworms start feeding on these detritus and cut them into smaller pieces. So dear students, stage number 1 is very simple, that is cutting down of larger compound into smaller sections or particles. The next stage is called as leaching. During this process, those broken down pieces finally they have ended, and from that now the release of water, release of blood and release of inorganic and organic substances come outside. Now since everything is happening onto the surface of soil, now we need to understand one thing. These inorganic substances go deep down into the soil surface or soil horizon, and in that they precipitate. They precipitate as unavailable salts, and this is called as leaching. I repeat again, since the body has broken down into smaller pieces and all that fluid material has now entered into the soil surface, along with that all those organic and inorganic substances also come outside of it. The inorganic substances entering into the deep horizon of the soil and then precipitating itself as unavailable salts is called as the leaching. Now the next thing is catabolism. What happens during the process of catabolism? I have mentioned in one of the chapter, that is in PUC first year, the living world, metabolism, anabolism and catabolism. Now same thing here also. Here we see the process or the working efficiency of enzymes over this detritus. Now enzymes feed on this particular detritus and convert that waste detritus into simpler inorganic salts or substances. I repeat, the enzymatic action on the detritus resulting in the formation of useful, simple, inorganic salts or substances is called as catabolism. Fragmentation is cutting the organism or breaking down the organism into smaller pieces or particles or complex to simpler form. Leaching is the process by which the inorganic substances or salts go deep down into the soil horizon and then they precipitate out as the unavailable salts. Now the third content is the catabolism, wherein which the enzymes act on this particular detritus and convert that detritus into the useful substances, into simpler inorganic substances is called as the catabolism. Let's go to stage number 4, and that is humification. Now after each and every process has been done, these organic nutrients, inorganic nutrients, salts, some liquids and the detritus, everything is being converted into a black colored amorphous substance called as the humus. This is a black colored amorphous soil. This is rich in a lot of nutrients, since all this is from that dead plant and the dead animal. This is rich in the nutrient resources. Now this particular soil is resistant to microbial action, which means that microbes do not act on this particular soil to once again further degrade it. Once again I repeat it, microbes will not act on humus because it is an amorphous substance and it has reached that stage wherein which this humus shows resistance against the microbes. This is called as humus, and the process of making this particular soil is called as humification. Don't forget it. Remember, this is the result of all that detritus being fragmented, leached, and then catabolized and finally reached to the amorphous substance. Now this thing once again further undergoes decomposition at the slowest rate and finally creates this particular humus. Dear students, I hope you are understanding it a little by little. Let us go further. The last stage is mineralization. As the name itself indicates that mineralization is nothing but formation of minerals. This is the stage wherein which some heterotrophic decomposing bacteria or fungi feed on this particular humus. Remember, humus, and they get converted this particular humus into the inorganic salts or nutrients. This is called as the mineralization. I repeat it again, formation of minerals is called as mineralization, and this is done by the action of decomposing heterotrophic bacteria onto the humus. Done, sir? Dear students, these are all the 5 different stages of the decomposition. All these steps are interconnected to one another, and this happens to almost all the organisms which are present on this planet Earth. It may be animal, it may be a plant, it may be any living organism. They should have to undergo decomposition. In case of a terrestrial ecosystem, the process goes like this, and in case of aquatic ecosystem also there is a compulsory presence of decomposers, and the work of these decomposers is to convert that complex substance into useful inorganic salts or the minerals. Done, sir? So these are the steps of decomposition. Let us enter into the next topic of it. What are the factors which influence the rate of decomposition? The rate of decomposition in the sense the conversion of that fragmentation into mineralization. Those 5 steps. The rate or the speed, is it high or low? It depends on some of the factors, and they are. Actually, we see 2 factors here. Point number 1, as chemical composition of detritus. Point number 2, as the climatic factor. Let us understand what is the chemical composition meaning of the detritus. Right, sir. The rate of decomposition will be slow if the detritus is made up of lignin and chitin. I repeat, the rate of decomposition will be slower if that particular detritus is made up of lignin or chitin. Can you imagine the lignin and chitin contents? Yeah, in some of the organisms, lignin is present. You can go for the plants. In some of the funguses also you can see the chitin. So those organisms whose internal body is made up of lignin and chitin kind of substances, after their death, their decomposition rate is slower. And if the organism is rich in nitrogen source, calcium source, carbon source, hydrogen source, oxygen source, or sugar source, if they are rich in these kind of substances like carbohydrates and etc., the rate of decomposition is faster. Okay, students. So I told you, in case of chemical composition, if it is lignin and the chitin, the rate of decomposition is slower, and if it is made up of corn and CHOs or the sugar materials, the rate of decomposition is faster. Let us enter into the second point, and that is called as the climatic factors. If the condition, atmospheric condition is warm and a little moist, then the rate of decomposition will be a little higher, or it favors the rate of decomposition. Remember, warm, increase in temperature, and moist, a little water content in it, which increases the rate of reaction. But if the environmental conditions are less in temperature, then the rate of decomposition decreases, because it is done by the bacteria and fungus, and the rate of activity of this particular bacteria and fungus will be good at not the highest temperatures, at not the lowest temperature, at the modest minimum moderate temperatures. So that's why the activity of bacteria and fungus will be good if the external temperature is a little warmer, and it is not at all good and they won't work if the external temperature is less than that. Okay, students, I hope you understood this particular topic called as decomposition. I tried my level best to make sure that you can understand it. I told it very slowly and stepwise. Okay, so that's why my request is that after the end of the video, watch it once again and download it. Whatever the video of mine, they are all available in YouTube, and it can be easily downloadable for the secondary purpose of study. You can watch it again and again in your mobiles or in desktops. Okay, now I'll bring another topic in my next video, that is a promise.